and welcome. This is Schnee from Archives of Nihilus, and today I'm going to talk a little about crafting. Due to the reason that at the moment the crafting officer slot in our guild is vacant, and I thought I'm going to give you a very rudimentary guide on how I craft and how I make my credits, and I'm going to talk about 3 ways of doing it that are, at least in my opinion, rather reliable because there is a high demand for the stuff that you're going to craft, and I suspect that it will be a high demand for quite some time. So first off, I wanted to say something about the very basics, and that is when you look at the crew skills, there are actually 3 different crew skills. One is the crafting bit, so skills that you can craft something with, then the gathering skills and the mission skills. The gathering and mission skills are quite similar because let's look here. This is scavenging. It is a gathering skill, but it also has these crew missions. So you can send your companions on these missions and you will get materials that are granted by this particular gathering or by this particular gathering skill. But you can also kill mobs in the game, so monsters, NPCs, and if they drop the materials that this particular gathering skill provides you with, then you can loot those mobs and get those materials for free because, as you can see, all those missions cost money. Yeah. And then there are mission skills, which are basically the same, just you can't loot NPCs. You only have these missions you can send your companions on, and that's the way you get the stuff that these skills provide you with. So that's very basic, but if you want to get into crafting, you need to be aware that there are these 3 different things. So you have to pick one of the following crew skills, and that is synth-weathering, armor mech, biochem, artifice, arms tech, or cyber tech, because these are the 6 crafting skills, and you only can craft stuff with a crafting skill. Wow, what an insightful guide so far. Okay, let's get into the 3 ways I craft and try to make my credits. The first is crafting assembly components. All those crafting skills I just talked about have this assembly components. Each of those crafting skills has their own assembly component, which can only be used for crafting stuff in that crafting skill. So arms tech has this arms assembly component, and it can only be used to craft stuff that arms tech can craft. And you can see Molitex, Farium, and Vanadium Flux are the materials you need to craft an assembly component, and you need 2 of each, and then you get 1 of those assembly components. Well, that is rather easy, but because you need these assembly components for anything you craft. Here, this is an augment, you need the assembly component. Look at the barrels, assembly component. Look at the assault cannons, assembly component. So you can't craft without this. So all crafters in the game who have arms tech will want to have this. A lot of them are going to manufacture it themselves, but a lot of them are going to buy it on GTN, and so there is kind of your sweet spot. There's the demand, and so craft a lot of these. They're about 4K and materials if you want to buy the materials on the GTN. By the way, Vanadium Flux you get from crew skills, I think, but there's also a vendor on the fleet, and it's 800 credits each. And then at the moment, Farium goes for about 600 credits and Molitex for about 700 credits on GTN. But this can go up to 1.5K or down to 200 credits. So you have really to check the GTN regularly and look out for someone who sells it for a rather cheap price, and then you buy as much as you can. That's kind of what you do here. You try to get these materials for as cheap as you can, and then sell the Farium arms assembly component or the assembly component for as high as you can on the GTN. And because, you know, this is really cheap because it's only 6 materials you need to craft, you can craft a lot of them And well, this is the first way. The second way would be to use your reverse engineering. Here you have reverse engineering, and if you have crafted, for example, this assembly component, you can reverse engineer it and you get the augmentation slot component MK8. So each time, for each assembly component, you reverse engineer, you get one augmentation slot component. In this case, because it's all grade 8, it's all MK8. So these are rather, yeah, you can sell them on GTN and they go for 4K a piece. Remember, here you have to invest around 4K a piece to craft this assembly components if you buy all the materials. So this would not make for any profit, but reverse engineering these, the assembly components, gives you back some of your materials. So I've reversed engineered 59 of the assembly components, and I got back 58 of the vanadium flux, 52 of the ferrium, and 57 of the Moditex, so more or less half of the materials I put in there. So all in all, the crafting for these comes down to around 2K. When I sell these for 4K, I make 2K in profits. So this is kind of what you're doing if you go for the augmentation slot components. Yet, because they have this higher profit margin, let's say, me as a crafter, I never buy them on the GTN. I craft them myself or reverse engineer what I craft to get them myself. Because, you know, if you then go on and craft augmentation kits MK8, and this is what you need these for, by the way, the profit margin is really very low because, and let me show you this, if you look at the augmentation kits MK8, you need 10 of these components to craft one augmentation kit. And remember, they go for around 4K on the GTN, which means 40K you have to pay to get 10 of the augmentation slot components, and then you sell these for, if you're lucky, 50K. So there's not a lot of profit in it, especially not if you think about for research components in this case, and you know the other materials you need to craft them. So I would say this is a way, when you sell them, you make a good profit, a steady profit. There is demand for these augmentation slot components, but it's not as reliable, in my opinion, as going with the assembly components. So with those. The third way of doing this, and this is the way I do it, but it's the most elaborate and it works the best the more tunes you have to kind of work together. And that's going for the augmentation kits. Because just think about it. Most people in this game, most players opt for augmenting their gear. And there are 14 pieces you can augment. So there's a high demand for these things. So every time I put those up, I sell them rather quickly. I mean, sometimes it's really, I close the GTN and the mailbox notifies me, hey, you've sold it already. So sometimes it really just takes seconds to sell them. And the profit margin, if you do it the way I'm going to explain it to you now, is the biggest, and it's really a steady income and a good income. Okay, beware. For this, you can only use 4 crafting skills and not all 6 of them. You can go with Synth Weathering, with Armor Mech, with Arms Tech, or with Artifice, because only these can craft the augmentation kits. The other 2, so Biochem and Cybertech, they can't. Be aware of that. That's really important. So you need at least one of your characters, your tunes, to have one of these crafting skills to actually go for augmentation kits. Now, here I'm on my main character Schneewittchen, and I'm in the same stronghold because it's my crafting stronghold, because I kind of made this. I'm going to talk about it in a bit. But I have multiple toons who craft the assembly components. Then I go to reverse engineering. I reverse engineer all of them. Let's do this quickly. Then I get partly back my materials, and I get the augmentation slot components MK9. Then I'm gonna put it in my legacy storage, because that's where all my toons can, well, access them. Put back the materials as well. So this is the first step. Then I'm gonna go into crafting. With Schneewittchen I have Cybertech, so let's send them to craft. This is a bit tedious, I grant you that, and the more toons you have who will just simply craft the assembly components and then reverse engineer them, you know, you're logging through a lot of alts and doing the same thing all over, but the more alts you do this with, the more income you will have in the end. So this is step 1, and then you log out and you go to your next toon. And lastly, you go to your crafter, so the toon that will actually craft the augmentation kit, which in my case is Atharia, and that is due to the fact that I spent a bit of money on gifts, and you can see Lana and Scorpio and all in all 6 of my companions are at 24 influence level, and with this influence level I get, one moment, 36% time efficiency for crew skills and 12% crit rate. And this is one of the main points, or the major aspects of making more income with crafting augmentation kits than, for example, going for augmentation slots or the assembly components. Because the higher your crit rate is, the more crits you will have on augmentation kits in this example. So you get 1 augmentation kit for free. That's what crit means. You assemble 1 and you get 2. And for that you didn't spend any materials, so if you say sell it for 40k on the GTN, that's 40k in profits. This is what you are looking for. So here I have also assembled the bonded attachment in this case. So it's not called assembly component, but bonded attachment. Sorry, I didn't know that before. Let's see. Yeah, it's bonded attachment. It's not an assembly component. So good to know. I'm sorry. So you can see it's the same thing. Yeah, it's just, you know, a bonded attachment and not assembly component. It's a different name, but it even looks similar. It takes the same amount of time to do. It takes the same amount of materials. The materials are about the same cost. So this is it, yeah, for synth weathering. And then we look at the augmentation kits, and because, let's see, I have crafted a lot of those bonded attachments, while my other toons have crafted the assembly components. And I've did a lot of reverse engineering that granted me 383 of the augmentation slot component MK8. On the GTN, I bought a lot of the Vida cloth, which is a luxury fabric. We're talking about synth weathering here, so that's the additional material you need to craft augmentation kits. Well, if you go for arms tech, for example, it's not going to be a luxury cloth. It's going to be something else. I think a research component. And with armor mech, it's going to be, I believe, underworld metal. So this is varies due to the crafting skill that you have. And then you have the slicing tech part, and I believe that is for all of those 4 crafting skills, it's the same. I think it's always this, and this is really ridiculously cheap on the GTN, so shouldn't be a problem to buy it. These go up to 1.7k a piece, so you really need to, yeah, watch out for when they are, sold cheaply. Or obviously you can go for underwater trading, which is a mission skill, and there you have luxury fabrics, and you just simply pay about 4k for a couple of those, around 10, and that's also a way of getting those. And then in the end, what you do with your crafter who has a high influence level with its companions, so a better crit chance, this is exactly what you do. You craft 30 of those in a row. Let me do that quickly. So if, for example, it's going to be 35 there, then I know 5 of these augmentation kits were crits, and they are only profit. I didn't pay anything for that. That's just because my companions are so cool. Yeah, and there you have it. That's basically how you do this. Lastly, I want to say how to get the materials. Some of them must be bought at vendors, but you can farm, send your companions on missions, or spend money on the materials on GTN. And what's the best way? Well, obviously if you go farm them, you don't pay for them, so your profit margin goes up, but you spend quite a bit of time farming for it to give you enough of those materials. And it can be good if you find a good farming spot, but I tend to simply buy my materials on the GTN because, well, if you kind of know what the prices should be and when something is really cheap, you usually make enough profits. And it's just the convenient way of doing things, and I don't want to spend a lot of time. I just want to, make a lot of money, not doing much, which we all want, don't we? So, and for this convenience, I also, in my stronghold on Drummond Cars, I put all the stuff that I need for crafting right at the entrance. That's your cargo hold, then obviously your GTN, then your legacy storage, because especially for the augmentation kit crafting, you're going to do that with a lot of tunes. And then lastly, obviously, you want your mailbox, because everything you buy on the GTN and sell on the GTN comes through this mailbox. Yeah, that's kind of the convenient way of doing it. Always be on the lookout. Yeah, that's a tip I wanted to give. If you're doing stuff like going for a flashpoint, an operation, or the dailies on a particular planet and stuff like that, so you're playing the game, think about what would be the most efficient way in terms of materials. So if I need 2 other hard mode flashpoints for the weekly, and I already have, my random flashpoint done, so I got the crystals for that. Then why not think about, okay, I need droids to kill for the materials through scavenging. Why not go for, an operation or or flashbot in this case, where I will kill a lot of droids. Maybe I wait a little longer, but I can gather a lot of materials. So that's one thing always be on the lookout for, and always be on the lookout on the GTN. Even if you don't need a particular material right now, but somebody just posted it for a ridiculously low price, buy as much as you can. Because you will use it anyway. You will do this over and over and over and over and over again, because that's kind of what you do, and that's where your income comes from. One last thing, never go broke. Simply don't do it for no reason, even if you think like this is the easiest gamble and the best gamble in the world. I'm going to make so much money, I'm going to be rich. Just don't threaten your own livelihood in the game. Well, and there you have it. This is what I had to say about crafting. Thank you very much for watching. This is Schnee signing off, and hopefully see you next time.